This week we got a lot of things to cover. We have the Master Tour finishing, we have ladder result, Grandmaster has its first week starting now, and we also have data from Off-Curve, Vicious Syndicate, and HSreplay. All in all, this episode is going to be packed with content, so you don't want to miss it. Hello everyone, my name is John, and in this weekend's Master Tour I went 4-4, which isn't too impressive, but considering that if you imagine the meta as a rock, paper, scissors game, I brought scissors into a field of rocks. Not the optimal thing. That being said, today we will take a look at people that did significantly better than 4-4. So let's jump right into it. Before I start though, there are a lot of you watching my videos, and if you would like to help me a little bit extra, I would really appreciate if you click the subscribe button. First off, we got the winner, JRS Lovestorm, who brought an anti-control lineup for this Master Tour. Considering that most of the field brought anti-aggro, this lineup paid off big time for our eventual Master Tour Onyxia Lair winner. Their lineup are a lot of decks we've seen before, but I wanted to highlight their Demon Hunter. The Brute Demon Hunter is a pretty old strategy. The JRS Lovestorm is, with the addition of Razorglaive Sentinel, is taking the deck in a pretty different direction, but that took them all the way to winning the Master Tour, which I think is really impressive. You see some interesting choices that when it comes to lowering the curve. You see animated Broomstick, for example, that you can rush your Irebound Brutes or Razorglaive Sentinels with, cutting down on core cards from before, like Acrobatics. And we have a few other people that made it to the top 16, but was not able to go all the way. We see Dead Draw with a refined version of the anti-aggro lineup. This lineup was really popular, but I think that Dead Draw really came up with some good lists. Part of our practice group, and we worked on these lists together. Although, not gonna lie, I didn't have too much to do with these. I'm not surprised to see Dead Draw being one of the people going furthest with the anti-aggro lineup, considering that his lists look very refined. Unknown, playing an aggressive lineup and going all the way to top 16, which I find really impressive considering that the metagame we had in the Master Tour was really hostile towards aggro decks. You see him on Shadow Priest, Face Hunter, Burn Shaman, and Aggro Druid. The same lineup I bought, but just did significantly better. Deads, who made top 16, went with a different strategy. Instead of going for like any particular target, to me it looks like they just decided to bring some good decks, which is one of my favorite strategies. The strategies of just bringing good decks is that you don't really make up a particular plan going into the tournament, or like, oh, I'm trying to beat this or that, but you're just adjusting on the fly to what your opponent has, and then you beat them with better decks that aren't suited to narrowly try and target something else. Total Orange was nice enough to put together an archetype breakdown in our Discord, which you can find a link to in the description. Here we can see that Quest Feldh is the most popular archetype in the top 16, followed by Ramp Druid, which then tied third place goes to Musaki Mage, Burn Mage, and Owl of Decay. Overall, we're left with a very diverse field, considering these are just the archetypes for the top 16 players, which is very cool to see. If you want a better view overall of how a specific deck did in the Master Tour, we can take a look at offcurve.com, run by Wicked Good. We see how Quest Feldh is not only the most prevalent archetype in the top 16, but it's also the highest win rate deck in the whole tournament over a large sample size. We can also tell by looking at this chart that a lot of the aggro decks did perform pretty badly overall, but that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone seeing how the field was mostly anti-aggro. I found the tournament very fun to both play in and then follow. Once again, congratulations to everyone who did well, and especially to JRS Lovestorm for a very impressive win. With so many tournaments going on, both last weekend and this weekend, I'll do the ladder section kind of short this time around, but I wanted to highlight two decks. First one is Control Warrior, which after seeing Dead Draw having good success with it in the Master Tour, it has kind of exploded on ladder and is going through more of a refinement phase. We see the Viper 94 and Django both doing well with it, and there are some interesting differences within their decks. I still think that we are some way from finding the perfect 30, but I like the direction that the deck is taking. We got a really new cool deck, or not exactly new, but I think a really good build of an existing archetype. We see Hattrick, who is a great content creator and hunter expert, who is using the Drektar package in Quest Hunter. Utilizing Rustroot Viper, which is just a nice tech card and a tradable, as the minions that you pull So it works double as both weapon removal, which is great in the current meta against Ruin Mithril Rod, Outrider's Axe, Bulwark of Asinov, you name it, even the Kirill weapon. But you also have a super strong tempo play on turn 4 with Drekthar. I really like this list, and you can see the superior David and many others starting to do really well with this deck. So it's one of the cooler decks I've seen this week, and I really wanted to highlight it in this video. This weekend we got Grandmasters starting as well, where some of the best players compete in Hearthstone. And with that, I wanted to highlight some of their decks. As I'm recording this, day 1 of Grandmasters has just finished off stream, and we have the people that went 2-0 in their groups. And that will be broadcasted on stream in their respective top 8s on Saturday. I'll leave a link to the HS Esports YouTube channel below, so you can also follow along. The MVP, when it comes to collecting archetypes for Grandmaster, as usual, we got Lorinda. First up, we got APAC, and we see that Druid, Rogue, and Demon Hunter are the most broad classes, with Kazakusan Druid, Spell Demon Hunter, and Quest Rogue, surprisingly, being the most broad archetypes. Quest Rogue is not a deck that I think had like that impressive of a showing in the Master Tour, so I'm surprised to see that in such large numbers. We also see Mosaki Mage, 6 people bringing it, Burn Shaman, still 5 people bringing at the very least, which is a little bit less than I'd expect. In EU, we have, once again, Demon Hunter and Druid being the most broad classes. We see the FLDH and Kazakusan Druid again. About as many Mosaki Mages, but significantly less Quest Rogue. We see 5 Burn Shamans, 5 Aulok OTK, and 5 Kazakusan Warriors, which I think is quite a bit more than we saw in APAC. And in Americas, there's Druid, Demon Hunter, just seems to be the 2 most broad classes in all regions combined. Not very different from the EU meta, some few changes, but pretty much the same. But yeah, let's take a look at the people who went 2-0 with in the group stage. Up in APAC, first up we have Mighty, who's a new Grandmaster, bringing Quest Rogue, Old Ram Druid, Quest Shaman, with the spicy tech of Earth Elemental, and Libra Paladin. This is probably not a lineup that most brought, but pretty much tried and true tested decks. I like the look of it, and I especially like how he seems to have consistent builds, but with his own style to them. Really cool stuff. Then we have Bankyugi, who is also playing the Quest Rogue, which I guess is very popular in APAC. Paired with Quest Shaman, also a pretty old style Ramp Druid, and then the Kazakusan Warrior. Bankyugi is known for liking like the slower, bit more controller decks, and while this isn't like full-on control, this is very much Bankyugi's playstyle, and I dig what it brought. As for Shaxi, we have an aggressive lineup, which I think is a great choice for this week into Grandmaster, because how I'd predict the field is to be, with anti-aggro being so dominant in the Master Tour, I would expect most Grandmasters to gravitate towards combo or anti-control, and then all of a sudden aggro becomes a really good bring to this week of Grandmasters. Well, it's interesting because obviously it wasn't great into the Master Tour field. So Sessi just bringing a solid lineup, having Token Druid, Miracle Priest, Quest Rogue, and regular Burn Shaman. You can't really go wrong with these decks, it's some of the strongest decks in the metagame. Next up we got the EU region, where both some fan favorites, some old school players, and some newcomers did incredibly well. First up, we got Gabi, who didn't get the first place finish that I think he and so many others wanted him to get last year in the World Championship, but he's back in full force, going 2-0 in the first week. When I see Gabi's lineup, I don't think I've ever seen him bring like a bad build of a deck. Just always really clean build of the best decks. And Gabi's decks are usually a baseline for myself to what a good list is. This weekend he went with Mosaki Mage, Ram Druid, Miracle Priest, and Questfell DH, which looks like a very solid lineup to me. K4U went for something similar, or actually very similar, with just the exception of having Rogue instead of the FLDH. Viper managed to go 2-0, seeming to bring like more of the anti-control style with the Quest FLDH, Ramp Druid, Poison Rogue, and Mosaki Mage. It seems like a good like level 1 choice, considering you're expecting the control lineup. And it seems to have worked out for Viper. And then you probably get the most interesting one of the bunch, which gets even more interesting because over in Americas, which I haven't covered yet, Fled, who brought the exact same decks as Superfake did, also went 2-0 in groups. So I have Alignment Druid and Libram Paladin, which, while not being the most popular choices, they're still somewhat known decks, just a little bit out there. Then it starts to get spicy. A sentence I did not expect to say during this review was that Quest Warrior with double Rustroot Viper is actually not the spiciest deck in the lineup. I'm really curious how they decided on that Quest Warrior should make a comeback in this meta, but when you think about it, kind of fits the anti-control playstyle that they wanted to go for. But then we get to the really heavy stuff, which is this mage deck that is running hits like King Mukla, Big Game Hunter, Cairn, double Drakefire Amulet, Mutinous. It simply has everything. While utilizing a lot of heavy cards, they're geared to beat pretty much every control deck. When looking at this, you have to remember that this is a tournament choice, or pretty much all of these decks are. And if you just take these decks and play them on ladder, you're probably not going to have as good results since they're part of a target strategy, which is very niche in the things that it beats. So if you look at this and like, oh, this is the ping mage I want to play, I would probably reconsider that for ladder play because I don't think it's going to translate very well. And I think that Superfake and Fled would be the first ones to tell you this as well. I'm very happy that they both went 2-0 in the group stage and proved me wrong, because their lineup is definitely innovative and pretty cool. Last region up is the Americas region. There is the new Grandmaster, Gamer RPG, looking to play it safe with some of the 4 best decks for the metagame. Going off to a clean 2-0 start to start their Grandmaster run. Gamer RPG is a player that I had my eyes on for a long time and is someone that you should definitely not underestimate. We also have Monsanto, who decided to go the aggro route, but then throwing in a combo warrior in the mix of it. I'm not entirely sure about the reasoning for this, but it seems to work out for Monsanto. I like the choice of bringing aggro decks. I'm not entirely sure how the control warrior fits, but it seems to have paid off for Monsanto, so happy for him. Then we have Dreadeye with a lineup that is a little bit more out there. We see a Metamorphosis in the Feldy Age, which is an interesting inclusion for getting more damage. You also recast it with Jace, so it's actually quite a lot more damage. I'm just not entirely sure if it's necessary. I have a Masaki Mage and an Owl of Decay who plays a Showstopper. From the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure what the Showstopper is there for, but they went 2-0. Last up, we have a deck I kind of want to criticize a little bit because I disagree with how it's built. It's Quest Hunter, and while I think the archetype is good, I feel like some card choices here in Dreadeye's deck could have been better. Cutting Multicaster, which is a pretty popular choice in the Dumbledore bunker list, for Petting Zoo. While it looks like Petting Zoo with secrets should be good, you're actually not playing any other minions in this deck, so run into any deck with removal spells. Those are just not going to be used over the course of the game because they don't have anything to hit. And while putting Petting Zoo in your deck, all of a sudden you just make them lightning rods for all the removal spells of your opponent. I can rarely see those being very effective, and I would much rather play more card draw to support the Petting Zoo. I get that they have the addition of Furious Howl, but with Quest Hunter, I think the more card draw you got, the better, because the way you lose is by running out of cards. That being said though, Dreadeye did go 2-0 in groups, so it must have worked out for them. And while last week we didn't have data from HSreplay or Vicious Syndicate, this week we can actually take a look when they have enough data to draw conclusions from Onyxia's Lair release. On HSreplay listed top 1000 legend since Onyxia's Lair, we see Kazakusan Druid being the top performing deck, although low sample size on that one. Burn Shaman is still performing amazing, and we see multiple iterations of it being in the top win rate. And we also see multiple Kazakusan Druids doing well, which is not too surprising. When we go down a bit, which is still like 59-58%, very impressive, they have Control Warrior and Owl of Decay making some appearances. And from my own ladder experience, this seems pretty accurate. And it's a little bit different from the tournament meta, since the tournament meta is relying so much on the ban. And if we take a look at the most played decks instead, we see Burn Shaman, Ramp Druid, Beast Druid, and Quest Rogue actually being some of the more played decks. I'm not surprised to see the aggro decks being popular, considering that the Ramp Druid is kind of natural enemy number 1. Also, Face Hunter, they're a little bit further down, which also amplifies that aggro decks are a popular choice for ladder currently. And if you are going to be playing ladder, you probably want to make sure that you have a game plan against these decks. And lastly, we have Vicious Syndicate, which is back with another great metagame report, which I think that y'all should check out for more detailed info on the things I'm covering here. I'll put a link in the description as usual. But in the Meta Breaker of the Week from Vicious Syndicate, we see that Beast Druid is the top performer of the format across the entirety of ladder. They're saying that you can't really argue with the results. And the reason for this being the best performer is because of its amazing matchup into Ramp Druid. As someone who has played a lot of Ramp Druid myself, Beast Druid is one of the hardest matchups. But they're also mentioning that the deck has some pretty great matchups, but also some really bad ones. And if you want to avoid that, Burn Shaman is still one of the most solid choices to go with on ladder, because it has more close matchups and it isn't really as rock, paper, scissors as the rest of the field. And those are the 2 decks that Vicious Syndicate recommend for this week. Whew. That was a lot of things to cover. I made this episode a little bit different, where I think I spent most of the time covering tournament decks, which are a little bit different from ladder results, considering I'm mostly focused on ladder so far in these weekly reports. But I understand if this might not be everyone's cup of tea. Maybe most of you are here to learn about what decks to play on ladder, and if so, make it known in the comments. I'm still working on how to structure this show, so all feedback is very, very welcome. But I try to still try to get some diversity and some really cool decks in here, so I hope it was still an episode that you enjoyed. That's it for me this week. If you're still watching, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and turn off notifications to stay updated when I post more videos. I really appreciate you all coming out here, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.